It's video. It's taping
now.
now. Mike, you're way out of it now. Just letting
James
you know.
Earl Jones, one of the greatest actors of the American age, or a menace who's responsible for multiple deaths and the biggest conspiracy in American history. James Earl Jones was lifelong childhood friends with Martin Luther King Jr., a very well-known civil rights activist. Now, as Martin Luther King became more popular, he started to lose the sole principles that him and James Earl Jones brought up together, and he used his own, and he took credit for them. Now, that led to him meeting the president, Mr. John F. Kennedy. Enraged that he was left behind, Mr. James Earl Jones decided to have his friend, Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald, kill President JFK. Now, he met Harvey, if you will, in a communist support group, as they often do, that are very well known in America during that time. And James Earl Jones got his communist roots in the movie Dr. Strangelove, which is a satire about the Red Scare. Fun little fact.
Fun little fact.
Wearing your Red Scare t-shirt.
Yeah. So then, on that fateful November 22nd, crisp morning, James Earl Jones and Lee Harvey Oswald sat in the top right-hand corner of the book depository, where they fired 2 shots. Lee Harvey Oswald fired the first shot that hit and wounded the president, and then James Earl Jones fired the second shot, which blew the president's brains out, and in fact murdered him! Boom! Murdered!
Murdered!
Then, James Earl Jones, pleased with what they had done, said he would leave, and he was going to go get the getaway car and some beers to celebrate their victory of killing the President of the United States of America. Lee Harvey Oswald then was like, okay, after 15 minutes without James Earl Jones, his accomplice, coming back, he decided he would leave and look for him, thinking maybe he was outside. When Lee exited the building, he was promptly arrested and taken into custody. He remained silent for the next 2 days until Jack Ruby killed him, and in fact murdered him. Now, where does Jack Ruby come into play? He was a well-known member of the mob, and as we are pretty all known, as we all know well, that it's highly speculated that James Earl Jones himself, or Darth Vader if you will, is one of the godfathers of a very strong mob in Chicago. So,
the Latinos, man.
he threw one of his lowers, Jack Ruby, under the bus and had him shoot Lee Harvey Oswald to shut him up and make sure no one ever knew that he was the real brains behind the operation. Now, back to Martin Luther King. He was still very upset with him and how he stole all of his ideas. So, he had James Earl Ray, which he met at a 2 first names convention, and they were drawn to each other because they were both James Earls, which is his true name, not even joke. He convinced him, using his wealth and influence and money, to then, in fact, kill Mr. Martin Luther King Jr. So now responsible for 2 deaths, that just wasn't enough for him. He needed more. He had to let the world know that he was a genius. So what he did is this. He was in Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner. He picked Kevin Costner to be his co-lead in that movie. Now, little fun fact, Mr. Kevin Costner played the lead role in the conspiracy theory about JFK.
Oh shit!
So we used the irony of it to be like, hey, guess what? I'm a guy who was... I acted in a movie with a gentleman who was for the JFK assassination, but no one thinks it's me. As the final cherry on the cake that is James Earl Jones' evil plan to just ruin the world.
And we also have extra information. James Earl is an anagram for measles jar. We have reason to believe that James Earl Jones has the measles.
Another anagram, as we found out, is Amia Jewel, which translated in African means son of Satan. So is this a coincidence? Or is it truly that James Earl Jones, Darth Vader himself, is one of the greatest evil masterminds we have ever seen in this country? That's for you to decide.